Hauntcast.
Haunting Halloween and horror.
You right.
Interviews with haunting gurus. What's up, my dungeon denizens? It is I, your G-host, Baker, titillating you with a spooktacular Halloween edition of Interviews with Haunting Gurus. Join me for a meeting with the Daves, David O'Neil and David Calamari of the Haunt at Wildcliff Haunted Attraction in New Rochelle, New York. What's up, Davids?
Hey, Chris. How's it going, man?
Hey. Now, I guess we'll start off with Dave O, because Dave O'Neil and I go way back in the way before times, back in the I think around the Haunted Halloween forum era, back in the late aughts, early 2010s, right? Is that pretty much right, David?
Yeah, man, and I'm a first time, long time here.
Yeah, You've been with Hauntcast for a long time. You're one of the people I absolutely remember as being like one of the earlier on fans of the show, and been with us ever since, even through our ups and downs.
Yeah, every single turn, I was still waiting for you to come back. But yeah,
you were like, yeah, he's got. Even the last time, you were like, he's coming back. It's just a matter of, he'll be back. He'll be back. He's got nowhere else to go. Funny, Denny said something to me one time. He goes, without Hauntcast, you're just some dude. You're just some random dude who does Halloween. He's like, at least with Hauntcast, you're Chris Baker, the G-host. I'll go, yeah, I guess so, whatever that's worth. Yeah, I guess you're right.
So we all started the home haunts to give us some legitimacy for our crazy hobby that we have.
And it is a crazy hobby.
I certainly credit Hauntcast and all of the people that just was exposed to it. It was the first thing that made me feel like, wow, there's other people out there that do this and are interested in it. And, this forum kind of led me to all those cool people. I mean, remember the Mitchells who wrote those books, and
yeah,
the Voice from Hell, and Ed Gannon, and Vic Barito, and Tara, who used to do those awesome tombstones, and even the Monster Guts props, and Leonard Pickle, and Woodloom, all those awesome, like, just they're legends to me, those guys. And this kind of introduced us to all that.
Yeah, you know what? It kind of introduced me this is one of those things, is as I've been doing the show, it introduced me to all those people. Like, as I was finding them, I was interviewing them. So like, as I quickly became exposed to someone, I immediately wanted to get them on the show and expose anybody else who wasn't exposed to them, so that like more people could share. And I was the same way. I thought, for years, I thought I was just like one of the only lunatics out there who did this stuff at their house. And I'd been kind of doing off and on for a long time. And it was so nice. It was so refreshing to find a whole bunch of other people out there who were all doing this shit and who were into it even more than I was.
Yeah.
And it's running across, like, yeah, some of these people I learned so much from. And I was like, holy shit, I got to up my game. I suck. I got to get better. I got to get better at this,
Oh, I think I threw out all of my store-bought stuff that like first year, and I was like, that's it. I'm now a purist. And then we all kind of go down that route, that road of being a purist when it comes to our props and what we're creating and all that. But I think we all come from like that same place. Like, we all kind of were kids, and when autumn came around, you just had it. You either had it or you didn't. Like, you smelled the smells, you felt the chill in the air, like you just knew.
The colors,
you knew this was,
the color scheme, the black and orange color scheme was out, and you had the fall colors, the smells, the senses. That was even before everything was pumpkin spice too.
Right. Yeah.
Before all the pumpkin spice shit rolled out, and they had orange Oreos with whatever black filling. It's It's one of those things that was, yeah, it's just one of those, I couldn't understand. I hung around with a group of guys who absolutely were not into any of this, and therefore they're not my friends anymore, but they, over the years, went back in my teen years, like nobody, I would be the only one who would get dressed up. We'd go to a Halloween party. I'd be the only one out of like 8 guys that got dressed up. I'd be in makeup and shit, and I just never understood, like, okay, what? Like, how are you not into this? And there's a lot of normies out there who just aren't. Or, they might get a little festive here and there, but, they're definitely not hardcore. They don't fall down the rabbit hole like kind of like we have. Now, as far as being, like you mentioned something about being a purist. Now, I'm a purist to a point. Like, I really do not want to buy anything, like, moving forward now. Like, over the years, I really have tried to, like, not buy anything. If I do buy it, it's from, like, a pro haunt vendor, so it's something that's, like, usually pricey and totally kick-ass. Like, I bought in a couple of Midnight Studios effects props. Like, I was just talking to somebody about this recently, too, and I said, so I built all these awesome creatures from my yard, and every year I'm trying to build something new, something better, something cooler. And each year people will come to my haunt or they'll watch my videos online, and they always refer like, oh, wow, that wolf is badass. Oh, that dog is killer. It's the Midnight Studios effects Timberwolf animated dog. Wolf, his head moves just a little bit to the left or the right. And I'm like, out of all the shit I built, all you're commenting on is the Midnight Studios effects freaking Timberwolf that I bought. A little disheartening, but I go on. But yeah, I try to keep as pure as possible, but there are some times where I see something and I look at it and go, well, if I could, it took me, how much would it cost me to do that? How long would it take me to do that? That would work in my haunt, maybe. I even stopped myself at the Midwest Honest Guy. I saw this prop. It was like this baby-headed spider creature thing, and I was so close to buying it. I stopped myself. I go, no, I don't want to buy shit anymore. I want to just build. I just want to build my stuff. I want it to be all original, all me. You guys try to do that for the most part with the haunt? Everything is homemade. Everything is made in house for the most part.
I would say for the most part. I mean, what you were saying about Midnight Studios, I like their stuff too. There's another company that I buy a lot from, which is Closed Casket Studios. So this year we're building like 20 bodies, I think. And obviously, like if we were to buy those individual props from vendors at like Transworld or something, we'd be spending $20,000 plus. Which we have more of a budget now that we're not doing a home haunt, but we're still on a budget. So I buy the heads from Closed Casket, and then we just build the bodies. It's a lot more economical, at least for us where we are right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I mean, even if you bought the body forms, not even like fully, just like a raw body form. You'll still be banging out like $400 or $500 a piece maybe for those things, and that will add up quickly. Sometimes you can cut your costs, like you can build 80 or 90% of it, and just like add a head or a mask or something to it, and you don't have to build.
100%. Sculpting those heads and everything, that skill for me to learn how to do that, it would cost me more time and money than it would to just. There are other great artists out there who already do it so well. So it's like, I can take that one piece and still make something that feels like it's mine.
We're doing like 12 monks right now, right, Days? With 12. And, standard stuff that hasn't changed since the 90s. PVC frame, chicken wire body, pool noodles, and then, some monk costumes that we're going to, customize ourselves, and some cheap masks that we're going to customize. So still very practical, and it's going to look great. Lighting
and viewing angle, enough said. That's a classic Revenant line.
We don't do it. We don't really do animatronics. We don't do pneumatics. It's a very traditional scenery, room, storyline, actors, lighting, sound. That is what really creates that really cool, authentic experience. And getting back to that purist comment, you're not going to come in and you walk into a clown room, then to a butcher shop, then to an asylum. It's a story, it's a mansion, it's a crypt, it's a cathedral, all with themed rooms, all with homemade things. And, we still love the drop panel. We're big on drop panels. We love the practical effects. We're located in a city park, so there's no chainsaws, there's no big air compressors. You'll feel like you're in kind of like interactive theater in a way. We were inspired by a local haunt near us for years. It's called Scared by the Sound, and they used to be in Playland amusement park here in Rye. And when you'd go to their haunt, like, it was just so detailed, and what those guys have done there, the acting was great, and we kind of just influenced by those guys. Like, you'd walk into a wine cellar, and he'd have a couple hundred real wine bottles with racks all on the sides, and just great practical effects, great costumes. And they have since moved to Yorktown, New York. It's Pat and Connor Costello, father and son. Great haunt, great people. We grew up kind of going to that haunt, and kind of design our things after that. And I think, growing up, I grew up right on Lake Ontario, and just like I think most haunters had an experience with, like a local fire department putting on a haunted house, and like that being like one of your first experiences. And I just remember that feeling, and it was nothing fancy. You are walking through a very simple haunt that's dark. It's got cool sounds being played. You got the local firefighters as the actors, and you don't need that fancy, expensive stuff. I mean, we don't have the money to buy those things anyway. But even if we did, we've always, even in our home haunts, both David and I, it's always been theme based with a story, with rooms that make sense. So you kind of feel like you're a part of it. That's what we're trying for.
Yeah, you got to have the backstory, and you've got to stick with that, and everything's got to make sense within your world. Like at that, you're creating the world. Everything has to make sense within that world. You can't jar them out of the world to be in some other place that just doesn't jive or go with what you already have established. You got to keep them in that world. And
it's all things that we learned from the exposure from this show and from all the people that we've listened to. I mean, we had Dick Terhune do our voiceover last year, telling the story in the beginning, and it was awesome. And it was like, I've been following Dick's advice for years, and I knew one day when we'd get the haunt that we were going to put all those things to use, and it's really just been awesome.
For sure. I mean, Dick said, I told Dick the last time I think I talked to him, I said, Dick, I said, I've listened through all the segments that you've done for us on Hauntcast about all the marketing and advertising, and I said, I've actually used those for my regular business, and it's done really well. I haven't even used it for my haunt because I don't want to advertise my haunt. I don't need more people showing up at my house. I don't want any more people showing up. As odd as that sounds, like I've hit the max of what I can handle in my neighborhood. But yeah, so I've even, used Dick's advice for my own personal business, non-haunt and Halloween related. But yeah, like I say, there's a lot of good stuff. I learned a lot from just listening to Revenant segments or other segments within the show that have benefited me greatly. I think one of the biggest things what I learned is creating a theme and trying to stick to that theme. And I've been running the same theme for quite a while, and now it's starting to evolve. I'm starting to get into this more Lovecraftian, Cthulhu, Innsmouth, Dagon kind of, the deep one creatures, because I'm on Cape Cod. I'm like, it's a perfect match for where I live. It's it really fits well and it's time to kind of transition my theme without having to redo the entire haunt. Just can start of like a third of the haunt can be that, and the rest can kind of be the same. Going back to your original home haunt, which was the Haunting of Westwood, correct?
Yes.
And that was in New Rochelle as well.
Yeah, so I came to New Rochelle as a college student. I went to Iona University and never really left New Rochelle. So first house I owned, Westwood Avenue, great little Halloween spot. It was like a cul-de-sac that had like some roads connecting in the back. Great Halloween neighborhood. I knew the second that I bought the house, that's what I was going to do there. Started with, just like everybody else, a few tombstones in the front and a few little groundbreakers and things like that. And then next year opened up the garage, which then led to, we'll add the screen porch the following year. Then I have a 20 by 20 tent the next year connected. And it just grows like everybody else's to a point where it's unsustainable and there's too many people coming, and it's become like all of this added pressure in your life, that you've just taken on yourself, a pressure that you certainly love, like everybody loves it. But it just became kind of a staple in the neighborhood. All of my, at that point we didn't have any kids. I had all my buddies that would come over and help, and it was a great time. Dave used to come over as a kid to the home haunt, and that's kind of how he got involved. Just coming into the home haunt, and he was my student 16 years ago. So Dave was in my Halloween in July class that I used to teach at a camp called Discover Camp in Westchester County, and it was a hobby-based technology camp, and you could offer kind of cool classes like this. And I was normally the rocketry teacher, but I said, let's do a Halloween class. Like, I just learned how to make the foam tombstones with the pink foam, and I'll bring in some Dremels, we'll make tombstones. The tombstone peeper prop that everybody was making at the time was hitting pretty hard. Everybody was buying those little motors and making the tombstone peepers. So we had all the kids doing the tombstone peepers, and Dave was one of the students in the class, and it's kind of a proud moment that he took to it so much that he went to school for this, started creating his own home haunt, ended up going to UConn, where he could not major in haunting because it wasn't really offered, but
there's no degree on that? No?
He got the closest thing. He got, what was it in? Technical theater design?
So I studied, the name of the degree was design and technical production, but I focused in scenic design and technical direction for theater, which Dave is right. It's the closest you can get to majoring in haunting. UConn, now that I think about it, they did offer like a design your own major. So I probably could have, if I really wanted to, created something and said I got a degree in haunting, but I enjoyed the theater. I learned a lot.
Now, did the Haunting at Westwood start in 2009, or was that just the first video that you threw up on YouTube?
2008 was the inaugural year, and
the first year of Hauntcast.
So, like I said, it went hand in hand. I think the second year I made a banner, and I made sure I put the Hauntcast logo on it. I actually think you were yeah.
You did. I watched through a video and I saw your the banner and it had Hauntcast on it. I laughed out loud. It was like awesome.
Yeah, and you did a very. I mean, who would have thought that you would have predicted COVID, Chris? I mean, you. That was crazy. You predicted a virus in New Rochelle, and we were the epicenter.
I was way ahead of the curve.
Most people know New Rochelle now because we were the epicenter, So
what was the backstory of the Haunting at Westwood?
It changed every year, but the backstory usually was our icon character, which was Dr. Diggler, and he was usually a demented scientist, and that was like kind of our first couple years, and then we went full on like virus. I mean, there was a virus that hit New Rochelle, and you had to take refuge. The only place you could take refuge was in the house, so you had to walk up and knock on the door. So I actually had the people knock on the door. Kind of like a butler would show up, let you in, and he'd say, "Yeah, come on in. It's safe here. The virus can't get you in here." But then, sure enough, when you go in, the virus has already taken over the house, and there's some infected people, and you're walking through different rooms to try to get out and escape the virus at that point. And that was all pre-COVID, and pretty kind of weird when we watch those tapes back.
Yeah, that's cool. So you were, they weren't coming into your house; they were coming into your garage. Is that like your setup was in the garage, and then it moved to and then it was like through the garage into a tent in the back or something?
Yeah. So you'd go up a long driveway into a detached garage in the back. You'd go through the garage, which had which was nice because it had another exit. So you'd go through the other exit into a screened porch, and then it kind of turned back into a big tent, which is where the finale would be, in the tent.
I mean, that's ambitious, kind of impressive for like you just kind of getting into it and doing, as much of a walkthrough as that. Would you have a whole bunch of people, a bunch of friends helping you out do this?
Yeah, I mean, we had some staples. One of my friends was a local police officer, and he was very good at like real technical stuff. He'd come over and he'd wire the place. He would do lots of little animatronic type stuff just with the wiper motors and things. And then, my cousin would come over and he'd be an actor. My buddy Tommy would come down and he'd be an actor. My buddy John, it's just a whole list of people. Sometimes my students, I've been a fifth grade teacher for 25 years. My students would come to the haunt. So they'd show up and they'd come every year. And then, sure enough, some of them are in their 20s and they'd be like, "Mr. O'Neil, can I come back and help in the haunt?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So, we'd always have a few of those, friends, local firemen would come over. It was a great little community thing. And then we all had kids, and you know how that goes. We're driving them everywhere, and they kind of take over a little bit. So I transitioned into instead of doing the open to the public, when the kids got a little older, we just opened the haunt to a party. It was like a party haunt at that point. Mm-hmm. Like we'd have we had moved houses, so we moved away from Westwood, which was really hard to do. I got a bigger house with a much bigger basement, and it had 8-foot ceilings in the basement. It's really old. It's a 1911 house, and I kind of went and started haunting my new basement, and it would just be for one night, just while the kids had this huge party in the backyard. And then I had all the kids, the friends, the fathers would come and act in the haunt. It was awesome, and I was doing that up until last year, until we opened up the real haunt.
So that was from what, like 2015-ish or so, 2016 through?
Yeah, I think 2017 is when we bought the new house.
Okay.
And I just changed it. I changed it to the Haunting of Sutton Manor, to our new location. And that's when I went fully indoors at that point, luckily. Yeah. So I got a break from the weather there, but it was...
So it's all invite. So you invited people, they'd show up, they could go through the haunt, and the kids could go do it, then play out back, and big Halloween party type deal.
It was awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
How many... did you separate? Did you build a bunch of rooms down there to like a maze or something for... How did you have that set up?
Yeah, we would do a full maze with full walls. We would do same thing. It would be, you're coming into a mansion. We called it like the Sutton Manor Mansion. You're coming in. So it would be, we had a nice, like, gross bathroom. We'd have a few long hallways. We'd always have a dining room. Like, I've always been like a dining room setup type of thing in my haunt. There'd always be a laboratory, so kind of like, I always kind of had that doctor theme, because I always had the laboratory things. I loved setting up a laboratory with dry ice and black lights and things like that. So that always kind of made it into the haunt. The dining room, the bathroom, and then you'd kind of go out and there's like a downstairs kitchen in my basement here, and that was the last scene was in that kitchen. And then they would kind of exit out the emergency stairs on the other side of the basement and right out into the party. So it was really, really cool.
Awesome. What character did you play each year? What was your staple character?
I was always the greeter. So sometimes I was a graveyard caretaker. One year I was an old lady who was, looking for my cat, and I was encouraging them to go find my cat in the haunted house, and that was kind of like what their mission was, to go find my cat, because animals had gone missing in the neighborhood, and that was my little shtick for that year. Mm-hmm. But because at your home, you kind of want to also, as manage it as well. So by being the greeter, I could still kind of act and manage things at the same time and manage the flow of the guests coming in. Mm-hmm. So I always took on that role. When we opened up the Pro Haunt, though, I became the icon character last year. I was Dr. Wildcliff, but that also took me out of the operations of the haunt, which I did not like. So I don't know what I'm going to do this year, but last year I did a lot of acting. And David's girlfriend was my partner in the final scene. As I would come popping out, she was in kind of like a prison cell, and she was Dr. Wildcliff's next victim, and that was the final scene of last year's haunt. So this year I'll probably take on more of a managerial role, where I can kind of I was managing the haunt from a radio in between guests coming into the room. So I don't want to do that. That was a little stressful last year.
Up until, I think, just almost recently, my whole thing was Dr. Wolfram. I had a Dr. Wolfram who was a mad genetic engineer, was splicing human DNA with plants, animals, and insects, creating these unspeakable abominations that roam the grounds of the village mire. That was like, so once again, going back to that the mad doctor, genetic engineer kind of deal. It just always seems to kind of work well with.
Well, it goes with the creatures that you create. Mm-hmm. I've seen your progress over the years. You've gotten really good. The creatures that you make just lend itself for that. You have a very unique display in the front. Like nobody has those types of creatures. They're all just they're unique. You won't find them in most places, and it kind of goes with that. And I like how you've taken on that. You've embraced the cape, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm trying. I've always tried to stay away from, and it was funny. I'd never thought about, I always see these people do pirate haunts, and it's never been a thing for me. I've never been into that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my thing. And I was like, I just don't find pirates scary, even ghost pirates. I'm like, yeah, okay, But, that's what I always would think about. I'm like, I guess I could do something a little bit more like the Cape, but it took me a number of years until like just a year or two ago where I started realizing, I read The Shadow over Innsmouth from Lovecraft, and I was like, oh my God, my favorite story. I was like, this is amazing. And I'm like, this would work so well. I could make this work in my, because it's based in Massachusetts. It's based in a sea town. You can't get better than that. It's like perfect. So anyway, I'm leaning into that and going in that direction. But yeah, I think that's what you kind of need to always do is you need to kind of create a couple of things that are so unique to your haunt that you're not going to see them in other haunts. When they come to your haunt or when they see, like a picture of it, they go like, oh, they know what haunt it comes from, kind of a thing. Having, your staple characters, people know it's from your haunt. It's not something that was, that's why I never use IP characters. I'll never use a Jason or a Freddy or anything like that because it's just like anybody could do that. A lot of people do that. It's just like, it's okay, but it doesn't fit anything that I want to do. And once again, it's people know it's from a movie, so it's hard to bring them into a world when they know it's not from anything that's in the real world. I guess I don't know. That's kind of my thought on it. But Calamari. So I don't. I know Dave and I have been kind of talking a lot, but now what do you, as far as your involvement, are you acting in the haunt as well, or are you all just behind the scenes, like designing, setting up, all of that kind of stuff?
So I am, for the most part, designing, building, setting things up. When we have a lull while the haunt is running, sometimes I will throw a mask on and go walk around the queue. And just entertain people, take photos with people. But for the most part, I'm running around like a crazy person with a walkie-talkie, making sure that everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, people are where they're supposed to be. They're in their scenes. They're acting. They're not on break or whatever. I mean, a lot goes into the. I'm sure you do a shitload of work. I've seen Dave just shot me like 50 pictures. I was like, what the hell? And I was like, he just texted me all these pictures, and I'm like, oh man, these are killer. Really freaking great work.
Oh, thank you.
Really amazing. We'll talk about some tips and tricks on scenes and set designs and stuff in a few, but we're leading right into that. O'Neil, I was just looking back through one of your older videos. I think it was the 2009 video, and you used the classic Roseanne prank. It was like the person under the table with the hole cut through the table, and it looks like and there's like a silver platter, kind of a serving cover over a tray, and when you lift up the cover, the person's underneath it, and it looks like their head's been cut off on a platter, and I just started laughing at it. I'm like, oh man, that's classic Roseanne.
I still watch every Roseanne Halloween episode every single October. Oh my God, that was the first. That was my father, by the way. In that,
was he? Oh, okay, great.
That was my father. They've always supported my Halloween habit. I mean that's just a classic. I knew it was going to be one of the first things I was going to do. Was that? So I remember watching that as a kid, going, "That is just so freaking cool." Those episodes were the best, and then the Home Improvement episodes their Halloween was great too.
Yeah,
we had some good ones.
There were some good. Yeah, like that was the '90s. You had almost every show did their own Halloween special almost every year, and it was fantastic. I don't know if that happens anymore. I don't really watch regular TV anymore anyway, so it's a rarity. I find that I watch more I'm watching old shows like old X-Files episodes and stuff like that. I'm like, I just don't really care about whatever else is what's on now. There's so much great stuff I can stream off of Tubi or wherever. You did the basement haunt for a number of years up until about 2 years ago. That's when the two Daves reconnected to. Well, and I'm sorry, Dave Calamari, you were doing your own home haunt for a couple of years, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, the way that I got started in this was not. I mean, O'Neil kind of pushed me into where I am now. Just totally obsessed and crazy about it, in a good way. But when I was very young, there was a house a few blocks away from me that did, looking back now, it wasn't anything crazy, but they had they had like a whole graveyard in the front yard. It was all store-bought stuff, but when you're a little kid and you see that, it's like,
it's magic.
This is the coolest thing ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
I was too scared to actually. No, yeah. What were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say, like, to a kid, it's like you might as well it'd be like Disney World quality stuff like you're looking at. It's like you just see it and it's like amazing. You're not like nitpicking out. Oh yeah, you bought that at Spirit. You're not thinking about that.
Exactly.
So it's like, wow, this is so cool. This is amazing.
Right. It's just mind blowing. But I was always too afraid to walk through the yard, so I would just stand on the curb with my parents and just look at everything. And then one year I heard that they weren't doing the display because their children were going off to college and they needed the kids' help to set the whole thing up. So then I just kind of decided, I was like, well, okay, I'll do something at my house then. And my dad took me to Party City and we bought some tombstones and a fog machine. And we started out, as Dave was saying before, very small, just a few tombstones. But the reaction, my friends who came by trick-or-treating, like they just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then it was that following summer that my mom had discovered Discover Camp, and she found this Halloween in July class, and I was like, yeah, I gotta take this. And that's kind of how it all started. I kind of grew up right near or when I was getting into this, it was right near the tail end, I think, of when like Halloween Forum was really big. So Dave introduced me to that. I probably still have an account on there. I have no idea what the password is. I haven't used it in so long. Yeah, that's kind of all those DIY projects and everything. That's kind of what I quickly got introduced to when I got into all of this. So I really like all the old school kind of build it yourself kind of stuff. And I think that is kind of what led me into studying scenic design in college.
It's amazing how little encouragement you need from neighbors and people who come by your house and they're like, oh, this is amazing, this is so awesome, like to make feel like the next year is, I'm doing it better next year. You know, I'm like, you know, it's just like a little bit. It's like it's like the little hit of crack that they give you, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I gotta get a bigger hit of that next year. I want to get people screaming about this place, and it doesn't take much to really set you off into this, like down this rabbit hole of home haunting and yard haunting, and then into pro haunting.
But once you get bitten by the bug, that's it.
It's it. There ain't no going back. You know, as we always joke around, it's like syphilis. It's like it never goes away. Like you can take penicillin, but it ain't going away. It's always gonna it's always gonna come back. It just gets you, and which I'm okay with that. I have no problem. I mean, I've completely accepted my total geek, nerdy kind of hobby and lifestyle.
100%.
It took me a while to finally just go like, this is who I am. You like it or you don't. I don't care.
I mean, and then that kind of just kept piling up. The more that I added, the more people liked it, and I was like, all right, I guess I just got to go all in on this. 2010, so 2009 was the first year that we did that little graveyard. Then 2010 was my first attempt at a walkthrough. I was only 11 at this time, so my dad was helping me with most of this. It was it really wasn't anything great. It was PVC held up with rebar and black plastic taped up to it. But, you know, you got to start somewhere. And then by 2016, which was my senior year in high school, it was a cemetery that took up my entire front yard, probably like 1,200 square feet. And then a walkthrough, which was in my entire backyard, which was another 1,200 square feet. And, you know, my mom still tells me to this day, because she's a real estate agent, that the haunted house became a selling point for people buying houses in the neighborhood, which was kind of cool. So people still ask about it, and now I can just say, oh yeah, we're doing it. It's just not at my house anymore.
Yeah, it's I remember some neighbor Oh, I know the name Bob. Dave knows Bob.
I know Bob. I heard about
Yeah,
Bob.
anyway, so I remember I got into this argument with Bob, our big blowout, and he was like, "You're bringing down the property values of the neighborhood. You got a freaking cemetery out in your front yard or whatever." And I turned to him and I go, "Are you kidding me? The neighborhood has I have brought in so many. It used to be all just retirees or summer, like half summer houses, half year round. It's almost all year round people." Tons of families with kids in the neighborhood now. I brought them in because they were like, "This place is freaking cool. This place is cool to go." Like it's great great for Halloween. It's perfect grid setup, so you can cover a lot of streets. And it's become an attract. It's brought people into the neighborhood and. It doesn't deter people. It doesn't bring down property values. If anything, it probably raises them.
Yeah, not at all.
Because people want to be in the cool neighborhood.
Yeah, and I'm sure both of you have noticed this. The more that we would add, I would notice people around the neighborhood starting to decorate more. Mm-hmm. And it kind of boosted the feeling of Halloween in the town or in the neighborhood.
It spreads.
Yeah.
There was nobody doing Halloween was almost non-existent in my neighborhood before I started this. I took my kids out for the first night trick-or-treating. That was like the first year I had them. I was divorced at the time, so like kind of newly divorced. So I had the kids one Halloween. She'd get them the other Halloween. So the first Halloween I had them was just before I started the haunt, and I took them around. And there was like a handful of people that might have had their lights on, and we went around. It really kind of sucked. And I said, next year, I'm going to do, because I knew the kids weren't with me. I'm like, I'm doing something at the house next year. The word haunt wasn't in my vocabulary, but I was like, I'm decorating the house for Halloween next year. I'm doing some. I had already kind of discovered the form, so I already knew that there was a whole bunch of cool shit I could build. I just had to figure out how to build it. But yeah, I mean, it was like one of those things where, and now, you go years later. I started doing the haunt like 2007. There's two guys down the end of the street competing against each other. They're like, "We're not competing against you. We're competing against each other." And I'm like, "Don't compete. Just compete. Just do what you can do. Like, you're not competing against anybody. You just like have fun and do what you can do each year." And these two guys have been going crazy. Now, all this stuff is store bought. One of the guys has the standard 12-foot skeleton and all that other stuff. But it's great seeing them involved in it. It's put a shitty grin on my face because now I'm not the only person in the neighborhood. And now the house down the street starts decorating, the one on the street over. And all of a sudden, all these houses are starting to put out decorations, putting tombstones out in the driveway. It really does start to spread over a couple of years and start to infect the entire neighborhood, and everybody started to get way more into it, and it's great. It's so good, and we're keeping Halloween alive. That's what we're doing.
100%.
Now, Calamari. So your haunt was what was the name of your home haunt?
It was Barry Road Manor.
Barry Road Manor, and that was
not very creative. I just slapped Manor on the end of my street name.
And then that went through until you went into college? Once you went into college, that was kind of the end of that?
Yeah, I still would go home in October and just do something in my front yard. But it was not nearly what it used to be with the walkthrough and everything. Part of that was because my dad didn't like the fact that the lawn got totally ruined. But I every year we would still get people coming by asking like, "Oh, where's the haunted house this year?" So I felt like I had to just keep something going. And I was still making props and stuff. Like when I came home for summer vacation and I was home, I would still make stuff. But I just didn't have the time to do what I had done while I was in high school.
Now, how did you two get to, did you have like a sit down and say, we need to do something? This was, what were we talking? Are we talking about 22? 2022 that you guys got together and said, we got to start a pro haunt?
So we had always, ever since I was a camper at Discover Camp, we kind of always like stayed in touch. I was helping Dave with his home haunt for years after I stopped going to camp. And then we had kind of talked briefly about it when I was in college. I think Dave made a joke that he was like, when you graduate, like, I'll invest in your pro haunt. And then I think during COVID, we started looking for places around. I know, great timing. But we started looking, and we got close with a few locations, but there was always something that came up last minute that made it not possible. So then we had kind of put the idea to rest. And then sometime, I think last summer, Dave was telling me about this greenhouse that he was getting involved with, and they needed a charity fundraiser. And he pitched the idea of doing a haunt there. And then he pulled me into that. And now we opened last season. It went great. Very stressful. We had 11 days to set the entire thing up. But we pulled it off somehow. And now we're heading into our second season. Luckily this year we have more time. So we're expanding a lot. And yeah, we're both super excited about it.
Oh, O'Neil, how did that connection happen? Like, how did you fall into this with the greenhouse?
So I've always run a really big school garden, and I was involved with the Hudson Park Children's Greenhouse. It started as like a Save the Greenhouse campaign, and I live a 2-minute walk from where the haunt is. So I live 2 minutes away from this haunt now, but walking 2 minutes. So I became kind of involved with the organization, and we were trying to save this greenhouse that was in Hudson Park in New Rochelle. And during this whole time, there's a mansion in the park. It's called Wildcliff Mansion. It's the oldest standing house in New Rochelle. It was built in the 1850s. And in 2018, it burned down. It was set aflame, some foul play, and the entire building burned down except for the stone facade. And it looks like a typical Gothic ruin where it has no roof, it has no interior walls or anything. It's just a shell. It's 4 walls with the cutouts for the windows and the doors and these really cool peaks. And so the city, rather than rebuilding it, they used, I guess, part of the insurance money to put a steel structure, a steel frame inside the mansion to preserve the walls. And they created this unbelievable kind of like outdoor like rental space for people. Or you could throw a party there. They put on a finished rental space, like kitchen that you could cater from, a catering spot. And they built 2 greenhouses on the property. So they kind of took 2 projects and merged them together. It was really a great plan. So I'm now on the board of directors of this greenhouse, and two beautiful greenhouses on the property of this mansion. And the second I saw it, I was like, this is a haunt. This is unbelievable. I spoke to the president, and she was like, let's do it. Let's do a haunted house. And of course, when you tell someone you're going to do a haunted house, they really don't know what that means. You know, anyone that's not in the haunting world really doesn't know especially when you're talking to Dave and I, who again are purists. We're going to make something that's realistic. We're going to make something that, this isn't just putting some skeletons and some jack-o'-lanterns around. This is going to be a haunt. So I pitched the idea. We made it a big community thing, a volunteer thing. The city of New Rochelle has had a long history with haunted houses. The New Rochelle Haunted House was around for years in 2 different locations. It was run by the Chamber of Commerce. It hasn't been in existence for 15 years. And we're kind of bringing that back because it's on city property. It's still run with, in conjunction with Parks and Recreation. which kind of oversees our greenhouse. And, it's a charity haunt, which is probably the only way you can get a pro haunt up and running without a few $1 million where we are. We're right outside of New York City, 2 minutes from the Bronx. Property is not easy to come by here. If you do find property, there's going to be no parking. So, we looked in every place possible to try to do our own pro haunt. And, it just was door closing after door closing, just really difficult to do, with our proximity to New York City. So this came along. We, before the property was even done, we were in talks, and the certificate of occupancy was issued like 11 days before opening, and that's when we actually got the go-ahead to go and start putting things together. So last year, all the construction was being done at my house. I mean, we built 150 wall panels in my backyard and stacked them in my driveway. I had all kinds of great volunteers that we reached out to. A lot of community members from New Rochelle in the bordering towns came to help. We elicited Boy Scouts, Volunteers of America. Since we're a 501c3, we can offer credit, like any sort of community service credit. So, I was a fraternity member at Iona, and I got my fraternity came, and they, some of the active brothers came and helped us move panels from my house to the site. Everybody that, you could think of, we kind of contacted to try to come in and help us build. Dave does all of the scenic work. He's extremely talented. This is certainly a case of teacher becoming the student. David is far surpassed, anything that I thought was gonna take place. I mean, some of the work he does, you can't even tell, the reality versus what he's actually creating. It's so cool.
It looks as good as I've seen Tattoo do, or any of those, any other, pro haunt professionals that I know from the industry. It looks super high end, really, really great stuff.
Thank you.
And he's, and he's, we get David a stipend to do this through the organization. He deserves obviously so much more than we can give him, because he literally takes off several months of where he would normally be working. I mean, if he wasn't doing this haunt for us or with us, he would be at other pro haunts doing rooms. I mean, he basically the last couple of months, he's being hired to go to different haunts around the East Coast and, to do a specific job. Okay, we need this scene created in this room, or we need this built and fabricated and whatnot. So that's what he normally does. So we're lucky to have him for this. And, hopefully as this haunt grows, David's stipend will grow so that we can keep him. Because without him, I do all the logistics. That's what I'm a camp director. I'm in charge of teenagers. I'm in charge of teachers. So I handle a lot of that management piece, the ordering and all of that type of thing, while the creativity and the CAD design of the haunt, all of that David creates. So he's soup to nuts, like from the beginning to the end. Designs and executes and does all these custom builds and of course I'm right there helping him put it together, but without him this is not happening.
Now, how many, considering the time frame that you had to work with last year, how many nights were you open?
5 or 6.
The last 2 weekends of October we were able to do, and I think we had one rain out too, so the weather was horrible last year in New York for haunts. I
usually get the same weather. It usually rolls right up the coast. I get to deal with the same bullshit. Sometimes I luck out. But I don't remember last year being too bad for me. But this year, how many nights are you doing this year?
Looks like we're doing 9. We're going to open up on October 11th. And then we're going to do the 12th and the 13th. We're going to do the 18th and 19th, the 25th, 26th, 27th. And then we're going to open up the 1st and the 2nd, which will be a first for me. I've always been like, once Halloween's over, that's it. But, it's so close this year, we might as well do it. we just we built the thing.
Yeah, I've always, in years past, my attitude on that has changed too. Usually, like once Halloween hits, let's like that November 1st, like that's it. Everything's done. Like I have no interest in any, in going to a haunt after that. Like everything has to be beforehand. But my attitude has definitely changed on that. I'm actually even considering the legendary haunt tour, which is in Ohio this year, because I always take my vacation the first week in November or the second week in November, one of my vacations. And I was like, maybe I could go do that weekend and hit those 3 haunts and then go somewhere else.
And also the first, I think, is Day of the Dead this year, so it's kind of perfect timing.
How much has changed between last year and this year as far as the entire setup?
So we've undergone a rebranding. So last year we were Dr. Wildcliff's Haunted Greenhouse and Mansion, and we were like, wow, that's a mouthful. Plus, we had kids showing up, and did we give them a show? Lots of kids backing out. I mean, we really didn't know at the time how scary this thing was going to be. At one point, we were like, maybe we'll just do something for the kids in the community. And once we start, it always turns into a real haunt. So we've rebranded to the Haunt at Wildcliff Mansion. So our website is haunt@wildcliff.com, and we've added a considerable amount of square footage. So last year you walked through one of the greenhouses, which was it was kind of a setup of a laboratory. It was not a maze or a walkthrough. It was just it was a straight walkthrough. There was no walls or anything. And then you would kind of go out into this open grassy space, and you could see the mansion off to the right in the distance. And we had 2 big cemetery gate columns that David built that were so realistic, and these big gates. And you'd walk through the gates, and there would be a beautiful walk through our cemetery, which was a huge part of the haunt last year. It was a really huge cemetery. It would be on both sides. It was all of David's and our stones from all the years that we've done it. We've had some of the woodloom stones that they did for us, all the custom ones that we've done over the years. And we showcased our cemeteries, which was always our showpiece in our home haunts. We kind of we each took a side and put up our cemeteries. And while you were walking down the cemetery, you'd look up and there's the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, we're on the Long Island Sound. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to have a haunt. Hudson Park is like a peninsula in the ocean. So really, really awesome view as you walk through the cemetery with the fog and the creepy music. And you entered a crypt. It was a little outdoor crypt that we built with, 50 or so panels. And it was kind of just like a, walk through, like almost like a dark walkthrough with some cool props. And that led into a pallet corn maze, which was not much of a maze, but it was more of a walkthrough. With typical things that you'd see in hay bales, lots of pumpkins, things like that, very traditional. And when you exited the corn maze, you were at the foot of the mansion, and that was our main attraction last year, and that was I think it was 2,000 square feet. And when I first looked at it, I was like, this is not big enough. But after Dave designed it on the CAD software and we put the walls in place, it was a really decent size haunt. You walk into a foyer, down some hallways. There was a living room, there was a kitchen, there was a dining room, lots of different types of hallways with sconces and drop panels and things like that. All just with actors and practical effects. Nice storyline in Dr. Wildcliff's mansion. And then you would exit, you'd walk through the scene it was myself and Dave's girlfriend, Samantha, who is a great actress, and we had the final scene, and you'd walk out and you'd be back in the parking lot. And this year, we're going to take the greenhouse, and rather that be just a straight walkthrough, we're adding a maze in there, and that's going to be a laboratory. We're always going to have that. This year's theme revolves around, again, Dr. Wildcliff, and he's a botanist, and he's trying to reanimate the graveyard in the cathedral that is on the property. He's trying to reanimate those corpses by using all types of botanical remedies and things like that. And he's created some horrors on the property. And so that's going to be the lab when you first walk in. And as you exit the lab, rather than that really big cemetery walk, it's going to be right into the facade of a big cathedral. And some of these set pieces that we're using, there's a haunt called the Haunted Graveyard at Lake Compounce. And Ernie Romajali, he was the owner for years of this. I mean, he did huge numbers at this place. Lake Compounce was a big amusement park in Connecticut, and he's retiring this year. And we got a lot of really nice. We were able to go up there and get a lot of his wall panels. He has a relationship with David. David knows him from Transworld, I think, years ago. And, he's given us, we're taking some of his cathedral pieces, and David's creating this really awesome facade with stained glass in the front. And you're going to walk into that cathedral that's on the Wildcliff property, for the haunt. And, we're going to have really cool rooms in there. Obviously, we're going to have like an altar type scene. We're going to have the monk hallway. David, maybe you could talk a little bit more about what we're going to see in the cathedral.
Yeah, so Ernie also, he let us go into, since he's retiring, we were able to go and he opened up his warehouse for us to purchase props from him, and we were able to get some really nice Gothic foam props that are not made anymore. Things from like the company Artist Tech, some Gag Studios stuff, just some really nice like skulls with decorative like filigrees and all sorts of just really nice old stuff that you can't find anywhere anymore. So we're able to just basically deck out this entire cathedral, and because of how much we're expanding, I was worried about being able to fill this thing, but now that we had this opportunity, it's less of a concern now. We got a bunch of real like wrought iron fence pieces and decorative pieces for all the walls and everything. You start out walking down a hallway with just series of Gothic arches that should look really cool. Then you head into the main room, which is going to be a cathedral with some church pews. There's going to be the altar at the front with this big scene. We're building a bunch of really cool props for it. There's going to be a hallway with monks standing on either side. We're doing the classic scare. One of them's, of course, going to be a real person. We're doing a mausoleum hallway. One of the mausoleum doors is going to swing open, and there'll be a person back there. But it's taking up a significant chunk of land that was the cemetery last year, and we've decided to shrink the cemetery down. So as soon as you leave the cathedral, you'll be at the gates of the cemetery, and I think it's going to help a lot because we're condensing everything that we had to fill this huge space last year into a smaller space, so it'll feel a lot more full this year. And then we've also added like a small blackout maze. Kind of people have to go in, kind of feel their way around to get through, and then there's a laser swamp, and then again into the corn maze, which is probably going to be a little bigger this year, and then the mansion, which it's difficult because we're confined by the walls of the mansion. We can't make that any larger than it is, but we've I went in several months ago to update my CAD drawing of the building, and we figured out a way to expand the haunt in there. It's very difficult, but we managed to do it. So that'll take a little bit longer this year too. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Nice. What kind of CAD software do you use?
I use AutoCAD. It's an Autodesk product. Yeah, that's
It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's what I learned to use in school, so that's kind of just what I've stuck with. And
when I was in high school back in the late '80s, they just were introducing that. I was taking drafting. I had a drafting shop, and they just started trying to introduce us to AutoCAD. At that point, that was like '87. It was a long time ago.
It's such a useful tool. Last year when I designed the layout for the mansion, Dave was looking at it and he was like, I don't know if this is going to fit. Like it looks like the mansion looks like it's not big enough for what you designed. And then sure enough, when we were actually putting the panels up, it fit perfectly, exactly the way it was supposed to. So it's just, it is such a helpful tool. And I don't think that if we didn't have it, I don't think that we would have been able to do the expansion that we're doing this year, just because we're constrained by this building. And it's got some weird nooks and crannies that we're building a lot of custom panels so that we can take advantage of this whole space, because we want to maximize it to the best of our ability. We wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for CAD.
Yeah, when Dave designed this in CAD, when he's doing it, he has the exact size of the panel, when he's doing the maze. So because we couldn't set up, Dave had a list of every type of panel we needed and the quantity and the size wood, and he had a cut list. So when I was able to get some carpenters here, we were just banging these things out, and he'd be like, all right, we need a double-sided here, we need a single-sided here, we need a door frame here, we need a drop panel here, emergency here. So we knew exactly what we had to make. And what's cool about this space is, it does have its disadvantages, but it does not have a roof. So we do not have to worry about sprinklers. It gives us the look of an indoor haunt, but you can look up and see the night sky if you really wanted to. Hurts us with the weather, but it's a charity haunt, so it's not like we had to lay out a ton of money here. I really can really empathize with pro haunters that are really doing this for their living, and they get a bad year. It's devastating.
Could be the the quickest way to a close, to closing up shop if they just had not like the worst October ever. I know I get quite a decent amount of rain up here in Massachusetts, so I always seem to luck out and not have it on Halloween Day. But I love to not have it the night before, because I have a lot of setting up still to do with the electronic shit, because I do try to run some pneumatic stuff out in the yard, but I'm trying to work my way away from that, because once again, it's so much harder to throw out the day of or the last minute. So Calamari, one quick, since you're such a guru now at making rooms look all disgusting, moldy, deteriorated, and whatnot, why don't you give us any tips you can on how to get a room to look like that, like the cheapest, down and dirtiest way to make something like that, to make a room look like it's been around or empty for like 50, 60 years or more.
The technique that I use the most for distressing, and I think probably most scenic artists in the industry use, is paint and water. So I get just some of it's Zep, the spray bottles from Home Depot with the yellow tops. So I get a few of those, and then you want to get some of the larger, like gallon or 2 gallon pump sprayers. I fill that with water, and then the spray bottles, the mixture is, I think, 1/3 roughly. It's not an exact science. Roughly 1/3 paint, to 2/3 water. And then you want to make sure that you shake that up really well so that the bottle does not get clogged. And first make sure that your walls are soaked with water, and then you can go in with your different colored paints. I usually do, for lighter color walls, you want to distress with dark colors so that it shows up. So I'll usually do like a black and a brown, maybe some kind of a green. I also really like white, but your wall has to be darker. Sorry, I think I messed that up. For lighter walls, you want darker distressing colors. For darker walls, you want lighter, like whites and like a lighter green thing, lighter green, things like that. And then another small technique that you can accomplish with the same tools is something called spatter, which kind of breaks the texture of the wall up more. So for that, you want to do a little bit more paint in the ratio, so a little more than 1/3. And then you kind of walk far away from the wall. You twist the adjustment on the tip of the bottle so that you're getting kind of more of a mist than like just straight stream of paint water. And you you spray it quickly, and you move the bottle while you're spraying, so you get these kind of fine speckles of paint. That helps break the texture up, that's a huge secret. They use that a lot in theater too. If you're painting something like bricks or like concrete, because people are viewing it from far away, not on a theater stage. They're viewing it from far away, so that the speckling kind of helps break the texture up, and it makes it look more realistic from far away. In our case, people are seeing it in the dark, so you kind of want things to be exaggerated, which is why a lot of the times you'll see, and in some of the photos that Dave sent you, you see these huge runs of black or white or brown running down the wall. Would a house actually distress like that? Maybe not. Maybe if it was really old and there was a lot of water damage, but we're exaggerating things so that it stands out in the dark and that people can see it better.
Yeah, it's like don't let reality get in the way of a great visual or something. I forget how that saying goes, but something like that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do try to make things look as realistic as possible, but again, you have to take into consideration that people are seeing these things in the dark. They're not seeing them under normal lighting like you would see in real life. So you kind of have to exaggerate things. You have to exaggerate various elements so that they stand out and people can see the distressing. The other tip is kind of goes hand in hand with the distressing is you want to be really conscious of your lighting choices. For example, if you use blood anywhere, we use very little blood, but we use some. You don't want to use a red light because the red light will make the blood disappear and you're not going to see it. Same thing with other distressing colors. Like if you're distressing with a green, you're doing like a moss kind of look, or like mold. Don't use a green light in that room because it's going to wash that out completely and no one's going to see it. So we use a lot of natural lighting, a lot of ambers. It's actually very infrequent that we use like greens and blues, usually just for like highlighting certain things or props or something like that. But we're a huge fan of using practical lighting, which that's another, for if anyone doesn't know, a practical is it's a theater term. It's anything that's like a real source of light. So like a lamp, something that would actually be in the room, is a practical light as opposed to like a theatrical lighting fixture or like we use Ned's LEDs. Like those are not practical lights, but we use those to highlight certain things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I've over the years, I used to do I used to do blue floodlights on my cemetery, and it would wash out any color or distressing that I did on the tombstones. Pretty much would wash it out. Everything just got washed. All the colors just got washed out. And over the years, I started getting away from that and using like yellow LED floods to highlight like the tree and a lot of the bigger props, so I don't have to have like a million little spot LEDs everywhere. And then on the tombstones, I just hit them with like just small mini spot LED lights that I pretty much made almost all myself. And yeah, I try to use whites and yellows and stay away from reds, blues, greens, or, because it just, unless I'm doing it for a specific area where there's nothing it's really washing out. Like if I'm just shooting it up the side of the house, I can do a green up the side of the house. It's fine.
Right.
And I just try to stay with, natural, like just whites and yellows. And I just find that definitely works so much better.
Yeah.
So I concur. I concur, my good man. All right. So now, and one more question for Calamari. Now, since you've become like a carny folk now, and that's what Johnny and I call people who are in the haunted attraction industry, because kind of can live a carny lifestyle to a certain extent. You're like bopping all over the place. Just what haunts have you been working on this year? And like what haunt professionals have you been working with or been getting work off of, or from to kind of that, as far as the last year or a couple of years that you've been in the business?
So this year I've been at Pure Terror Scream Park in Monroe, New York. I was at Field of Screams in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Lancaster. I got yelled at for mispronouncing it while I was there. So that was a really fun gig. I did one of their newest hayride scene. I repainted the entire thing, gave it a big facelift, so people can see that there this year. And then I did some projects at Brighton Asylum in New Jersey. Am I missing? I'm pretty sure that's it for this year. I worked at a haunt in college. It was near UConn. And one of the owners, he's no longer an owner of the haunt. He now works for Tesla, but I'm still good friends with him. He's actually my business partner. We have a business called Tailored to Fear. We have a small scene shop in Connecticut. So we also take on commission projects that we build and paint in the shop, and then we send it out from there. So I've been working on some theater stuff too. We do both haunt stuff and theater stuff. Right now we're working on a Hocus Pocus Live, which is kind of a blend. It's like a live staging of Hocus Pocus that they turned into a musical. So we were brought on last year to build scenery for them, and they're having us do some more stuff for them this year. So that's been super fun. Yeah.
That's great. If you work in the haunted attraction industry, you got to have your hands in like anything you can in a theater or whatever, independent movies, anything else that you can get involved in to keep busy and keep working. I'm sure is essential.
Yeah.
All right. So where can people get more info, buy tickets, get directions to your haunt?
Haunt at wildcliff.com. And we use HauntPay, which we had a lot of success with last year, and we're using them again this year. So we're doing our time ticketing, and everything's on the site. Our backstory is on the site, a little bit about Dave and I, some history about the Wildcliff Mansion, and haunt at wildcliff.com.
Awesome. Any other social media or anywhere else people can find out more about the haunt? Or
I mean, I post stuff on my personal page, just both work that I'm doing elsewhere and also specifically for the haunt. My Instagram handle is David_Calamari. I'm also a magician, so I post stuff about that as well. But yeah, if people want to find out about the haunt, that's where to find the info.
Excellent. All right, guys, we covered a lot. I think you guys have, and I'm sure you guys have to get back to work. I'm sure you got things to do.
Have a lot of building to do this month.
Yeah, I bet. Sounds like you guys are busy. Excellent. I'm so excited, man. This is great. Dave, I know you had mentioned something before about David Calamari and how you were hoping to maybe do something. I think this was when he was still at UConn, and then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they're like, "Hey, man, we're doing a pro haunt." I'm like, "Awesome, great!" And I'm like, "Keep me in the loop. Let me know. I want to find out. I gotta know."
Finally happened, and of course, you are invited anytime you'd like to come, Chris. VIP.
Have a killer season. And I will catch you around the interwebs.
Thank you.
Stay scary.
Please follow the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. Stalk us on social media. Links in the description. And visit our blog page for more show info at hauntcastpodcast.net/blog. Until next time, stay scary.
Go ahead. Go on, there's the door. You can do better. Let's see how far you get.